Welcome everybody to the Jurassic Park Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Jost, and today I'm joined by my lovely, which side is he on? This side, my lovely friend here, Tom Fishenden, and we're going to be talking about some spoilers for Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. This is kind of an off-the-cuff episode. I feel like a lot of our stuff's been very structured recently, so we're just gonna have a fun conversation about the show. You know, since we got the chance to watch it ahead of time, we're gonna dive into all of those spoiler details. So if you have not seen the entirety of the show, please step away, come back, watch it some other time. We do have non-spoiler content if you want to watch that or listen to that, but this is going to be full-on heavy spoilers the entire time. So Tom, you ready to talk about some Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous spoilers with me?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
So, look, I mean, we don't want this to be too structured, so we'll be skipping around all over the place. Maybe in the future we'll do episode by episode breakdowns and stuff like that for you, but we just wanted to put together something that was covering the entire thing. So we're going to be skipping all over from episode 1 to 8 to 4, whatever it is. So Tom, do you have a specific
17?
17? No, there's no episode. I mean, maybe next 2-3 seasons, however. But we're gonna dive into whatever is your most thought about thing. What was that one thing that really got to you while watching this show? I want to dive into something juicy right off the bat.
Okay, so the biggest thing for me is all of the genetic stuff that they do with Wu.
Mm-hmm.
So in episode 2, essentially the kids are split into 2 groups, and one group of kids go to this research lab that's outside of the one we know was part of the Innovation Center, and it is away in the north part of the island. And
yeah, you see the volcano in the background, actually.
Yeah, you do. You see Sibo, or Sibo, however you want to say it. And what's really cool is this facility, they actually tie it into the raptor chase sequence in Jurassic World, because this is where that research sign was going to, which is really, really cool. And so they're at this facility, and there's kind of lots and lots of different little nods here. And it's kind of like, 5 minutes spent in the lab of this sort of 20-minute episode, and yet you get a lot of stuff in that. So I think probably the biggest thing from that for me is the fact that there's a nod to some of the Masrani global material. So for anyone who has used the backdoor, which is obviously a piece of the viral marketing for the first Jurassic World film, that spoke about a site called the Martel site, which was a InGen/Masrani facility in Siberia researching woolly mammoths. And in this, you see a woolly mammoth-like sample. It doesn't look anything like one because it's just like a bit of skin or something.
Yeah.
But he goes past and says this is one of the woolly mammoth samples, essentially.
Yeah.
So this scientist confirms that facility in Siberia is real. And that gets me really excited, because obviously from the official set photos that have been released to tease Dominion, they've been filming in snow. What do they have in Siberia, Brad?
I don't know. And that was one of those things that, even in a lot of the stuff before we actually saw Jurassic World Live Tour, they were like thinking about maybe touching on Siberia as well. So this concept of, the cold and Siberia and a facility out there, whatever it is a pretty big concept here. And, this is something that during this moment in the show, I think Dr. Wu's right there with the kids, and Sammy is just like, ooh, what's this? Oh, what's that? Oh, what's this? And it's just like literally one hit after another. And it literally just like, those are Siberian mammoth remains. And it goes on to the next thing. So it's not like it lingers. It doesn't really tell you a lot about whatever it is, but it's this nice little juicy tidbit of information about like, hey, there's a lot more going on here. Maybe they're testing some other stuff. I really like that part.
And I think you say something quite cool where you say there's a lot more going on here. Wu actually says something that we've never really had confirmed before this point. Woo woo!
That's some of the best stuff. I laughed so hard. What is his name? Dave? I was laughing so hard at Dave when he introduced Dr. Wu.
That is one of my favourite pieces of dialogue in the whole show. I'd quite like to just have that on loop. like if I ever meet BD Wong, I'm gonna play that to him as I see him.
It's just like your phone ringer or something. But
Yeah.
I like how it just takes him down a peg, and he's just like, "What? Like, come on."
Yeah. It's quite cool though, because here you kind of get insight into there being again more on Nublar than we know about. And I think it is worth saying, since this is a spoiler episode, we don't necessarily explore as much of Nublar as we would like to, I would argue. But there is going to be plenty of time to do more, because there will be more than one season. But in this particular moment, Wu expresses the fact that there's multiple research facilities on Nublar. So obviously we have got the one that is at the Innovation Center on the back of the Creation Lab. We have got this satellite site. But then what this also suggests is that the facility that we see Genie in the live tour could quite easily be canonized. And this suggests that if they wanted to, this new research facility that we're going to see in Jurassic World Aftermath could also be canonized. So I like the idea that although we know these locations in Jurassic World and we see them as the kind of like hub of the science work, it's very much like the depiction of this in Jurassic Park, where you have the show area where you can see dinosaurs being hatched, and then you have the actual areas where the other work is going on. Only in this case, it's all on the same island as opposed to being on Nublar and then Site B.
Yeah, there was actually some interesting details about like that behind the scenes work and the stuff that the employees do as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. For instance, they show the dinosaurs being herded into their nighttime pens and stuff like that. And you do get to hear about, places where they keep the more aggressive dinosaurs and stuff like that are not, for the visitors. So I love stuff like that. I love those little details showing that this is an operating place. The herding thing was really fun. It's such a small little detail, but watching them herd them with the ATVs, they're going off in the that was like during a storm or something like that. But yeah, I love all these details. And, you mentioned, we both mentioned Jurassic World Live Tour a little bit. I'm kind of bummed that, there wasn't more or any, to be honest, there wasn't any tie-in to Jurassic World Live Tour. I know we've heard the whole, soft canon business from Colin, but I think there was so much room to explore that. And you were saying about the, a potentially another place on Nublar that houses other experiments, because I don't know, we don't really know what specifically was going on that one research facility. It seemed like it was maybe a hybrid thing, but then so did the one in the visitor center. So who really knows? But the one that Genie is in, you could say like that's a behavioral place or something like that. Kind of bummed about the Jurassic World Live Tour stuff not being shown in here. But I did, we talked about it during our non-spoiler episode, how I said that there was something that was done a little bit better in other material, and it was the Jurassic World Live Tour moment when you see the glowing dinosaur, the Stegosaurus, and you're like, it's just such a beautiful moment, and they explain a somewhat silly reason, but it's kind of a fun reason. The fact that, it was going to be used for a nighttime parade. The dinosaurs would have been used for a nighttime parade. In the show here, it's just kind of glossed over. I forget what specific episode it was. It was a little bit, it was like maybe 6 or 7. Number 6. And they just basically say something about like, oh, I guess Dr. Wu was testing out some bioluminescent dinosaurs, and that was about it. There really wasn't much to the story there. So while I thought that moment was beautiful and amazing and cool, it was slightly let down because I was hoping for a little bit more of that backstory from like the Main Street parade and nighttime parade and stuff like that. As I'm saying, because I like hearing about the work that's going on behind the scenes and stuff like that, like people herding dinosaurs and nighttime parades, stuff like that. But overall, I thought that bioluminescent cave was pretty incredible and pretty awesome. The music in that scene, which I talked about with the producers, it's just so beautiful, so inspiring. It's such a great moment. I thought the conversations and the banter back and forth in that sequence were really good. That was a fun moment for me, that bioluminescent cave.
Yeah, I think it all felt really well composed.
And it's a new place too. You know, I know you
Yeah,
mentioned that there's not a ton of new places, right? We have, what do we have? Let's kind of list them out. We have a cave, a bioluminescent river cave, which is interesting because we also have the Cretaceous
Cretaceous
cruise,
cruise.
which is the
Yeah,
same
well,
thing, but it's not.
is
It's like
it?
it's a separate thing.
So there's something interesting here, and I made a note of this because I wanted to make sure we mention this.
Hmm.
In the show, this is referenced as the River Adventure, so
Yeah,
not the Cretaceous Cruise. And
yeah,
I feel like that's a really nice kind of tongue-in-cheek nod to the fact that that's the name of the real-life attraction that we can all go on.
yeah.
Obviously at Universal Studios, but also I do wonder if that's confirming that there was more than one water ride because it was the same kayaks as you
Hmm.
see in the Cretaceous cruise. But I mean, if you look back at the Masrani Global website, there was one of the live cameras on that website that had like a pier where the kayaks were coming out from. So
Hmm.
you could like see people going out and joining the river from this like little
Sure.
dock. So I almost maybe it's a case of that's further up and they like link up, but it almost feels
Yeah.
like it might be a new attraction.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to look at the map to see where the original one was located. This is a bit deep for now, but yeah, I just feel like they're separate things, and the fact that it was called the River Adventure was really cool, especially because there's Parasaurolophus in the
Yeah.
cave, and in the ride, in Universal, the Parasaurolophus bumps you off course, and then you go the
Yeah.
wrong way, and that's kind of what happens here. You know, the Parasaurolophus bump out and almost start to attack the boats, but like get a little aggressive. Um, it kind of reminded me of like the Jurassic World Evolution ones because I'm like those guys are so annoying in that game, and it felt like the same here. So they kind of get bumped off course and they do go to the lagoon again. So that's a repeat of an area. But what do we have? We have
Yeah.
the cave. We have that
The new
research
lab.
center.
Yeah.
We have obviously the camp itself.
Zip
Um,
line.
Zip line. It's kind of it's kind of like up there with the camp. But outside of that, was that about it? I feel like that was probably close to it.
I
Um,
I think it depends. I'm not entirely. I I'm not convinced that the herbivore sequence takes place in Gyrosphere Valley, just because it kind of felt like maybe it was more a back pass that they would use to like do that herding rather than being the actual attraction itself. Um,
yeah. Well, plus there's a
yeah,
lot
'cause-
of different dinosaurs in there. I mean, we see a pretty good wealth of dinosaurs in Jurassic
yeah,
World in the Jurassic Valley, but we don't see that Sinoceratops. We
no,
don't see the
yeah.
Brachiosaurus. We don't see some of those. So yeah, it could be a totally
Interestingly,
separate section. You know, a different version of it or something.
yeah, I think there's some credence to that idea as well because we don't see the Gallimimus at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. And that would be, you would think that would be like an easy addition and a common
Yeah,
addition. Um, yeah, but I do love the choice of the dinosaurs and everything that they
yes,
did use
right.
here. I was so happy that they answered some, or not really answered, but they kind of linked these films a little bit, more together with
Yeah,
Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World, with the Sinoceratops, even the Brachiosaurus. What did I say? Brachiosaurus. The fact that it was in Fallen Kingdom but not in Jurassic World. You kind of hear something off in the distance. You're like, is that a Brachiosaurus
yeah.
back there? But now you get to see it for real in the park.
See it
Um,
before it's toasted.
Man, no, dude, they're just doing these Brachiosaurus wrong in this Jurassic World age, man. First one gets burned, and then this time
Perfect for a
one gets
campfire snack.
what's that?
Perfect for a campfire snack.
Dude, this one, just the one in this show, gets ripped from the trees. Like, you don't see anything. All of a sudden you just see like it smashes to the ground, and I'm like, "Oh, this is horrifying." Like, they're
Yeah,
just killing this, like, there are moments in the show that are pretty terrifying, and I know a lot of
yeah,
people were kind of worried about that. Honestly, from the start. From the start, going all the way to the beginning. Let's talk about that for a second. There's it's kind of throwing you off a bit. You're like watching the show. You're like, who are these characters? What's going on here? There's kind of a vicious attack of these, like, I think there's 3 Velociraptor
yeah.
attacking a dude, and you're like, what is this? And then it turns out to be a video game. Did you expect that at all at that moment in the
No,
beginning?
I thought that was really cool. I don't know what I expected. I thought maybe it was gonna be like before they started building Jurassic World and somebody had snuck
Mhm.
onto Nublar or something. But when it
Yeah.
transpired it was a video game, I was like, do you know what? This makes sense because actually it lets them do stuff with the raptors
Yeah.
without having to break the canon by being like, oh, all of the raptors are still alive.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Jurassic World Aftermath.
And now, honestly, when I was rewatching it after learning about Aftermath, I was like, oh, wait, is this Aftermath?
Yeah, it could be. It
I was
could
like,
very well be.
That would be
which
really, that would be an amazing tie-in, dude. Like, that would be really
It would.
incredible. I don't think they'll do it. I don't think that's what's happening here, but it would be really cool for that to be a thing because it works the
Aftermath
same
has got
way.
the cartoon style.
Mhm.
So you don't know. And I mean,
it could work.
Darius's bedroom, some of the like poster merchandise on that wall and stuff like that is using renders from real world merchandise. So it's possible.
Yeah. And as soon as that thing comes out, I'm gonna play it real fast and beat it before any of you guys because I need to win a trip to Jurassic World. Is there one?
Brad,
Maybe it's just Universal Studios at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, we need to have an intervention. This is a fictional universe.
No,
these characters aren't real.
What are you telling me right now? But I enjoyed that introduction there because we did wonder. I remember talking about it actually on the podcast one day about how do these kids get to the island? What is the reason that they're there? And one of the things that sparked up in my conversations at one point was maybe this is like a Willy Wonka type moment where it's like a golden ticket kind of thing where you win your golden ticket to the island. And that's kind of what it is. It's like a mix of, Willy Wonka and Ready Player One. After you beat the game, you get the thing. So I thought that was pretty cool that's how Darius was given the chance to go to the island. And of course, all the other kids were either rich, tied to the park in some way, sponsored by the park in some way, or just famous or whatever. But I thought that was a cool way to get him onto the island as the everyday kid, the everyday dino geek,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It kind of subverts your expectations because you don't really see anything like that happening. You think this is an action sequence that's going to take place in the real world. So when it kind of happens in the virtual plane, it's really cool and quite unexpected. And on the subject, I was going to say, on the subject of unexpected, especially with the kids, one thing that really took me back when she was first introduced was Sammy's last name, because it's clear that they, Zach, especially when he was reading, must have gone back and read some of the novels as well, because her last name is Gutierrez, which is a nod to Dr. Martin Gutierrez, who is the doctor who finds the like half-eaten compy and then sends it to the lab in Jurassic Park, and I think he's then trying to hunt them in the Lost World as well. So
when you said Zach, my brain went initially to Zach and Gray, and I was like, what was he reading? He was reading he knows this is happening? Like, oh, you mean Zach Stentz. Okay, all right, I got it now. But actually, speaking of Zach and Gray, they got a nice little shout out here, too.
Yeah.
That they were supposed to be a part of this park, or this camp. Did that work for you? Did you feel like that was actually a plausible thing? Because
honestly,
nowhere in Jurassic World was that mentioned,
I think it makes sense, because when you look at Claire, if it's something that's not been organized properly, she's too busy to know. Zara's only going to do what she's told to do because she's busy organizing a wedding. So I can totally see that. Like, it just doesn't pan out for whatever reason, and nobody really cares.
It's weird. I mean, I'd have to really parse out the details of the timeline for that event. But the fact that they just get thrown off to Zara and then she just takes them out to the Gyrosphere Valley to do all this other stuff. Yeah. So why double down? Because they probably would have done a lot of that stuff anyway on the camp tour or whatever they were going to do. So why do double it? Why didn't they just go from the airport or the boat right to the camp? Why aren't they getting the helicopter in?
I can explain it all, Brad.
Tell me.
Let's go. I think that this sequence, the camp started slightly before Jurassic World. So the kids, I think Zach and Gray were late. They came later, and that's why they weren't part of it. Because if you watch, I'm going to scroll down on my Word document quickly because I did write it down somewhere. Episode 4. The start of episode 4 is Roxy looking up in the air as Jurassic World 001 arrives on the island.
Mhm.
That's the start of Jurassic World when Masrani arrives and lands at the control room.
But if you're late, why aren't you just going to write what you have to do instead of like, oh, I'm going to dilly-dally and do some other stuff. I'm already late. Why don't I just go ahead and stop and get a coffee while I'm at it too, you know? Like,
I mean, yeah, it's probably a case of like, I don't know, because it's the testing phase for this thing, isn't it? They probably were like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense for them to come late now, so they can just do something else.
I mean, honestly, maybe it was the fact that they thought that they would be able to spend some time with their aunt before heading off to the camp, and that didn't work out, so Claire got sidetracked or whatever. You can easily explain it in that sense, I guess, but and it's not like it really matters all that much. I don't think that's not like a thing where I'm like, oh, this is stupid. But like, it just, it's when we're doing a podcast that's like going to be like, well, not this one specifically, but we're going to be talking about this stuff for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. So like, this is the stuff we got to parse out. But talking about... So
look out for a future episode debating the entire timeline of Zach and Gray's journey to Isla Nublar. Yeah. And their expedition across the island.
Well, that's where I want to go right now. I want to go to the timeline because the timeline was a major question for a lot of us going in. Luckily, we got 3 episodes before Jurassic World actually started. I was very happy about that. Like you're saying, we didn't really get to see a ton of stuff, but there was plenty of stuff to do in those first 3 episodes. But the moment that you're saying that, she looks up, Roxy looks up and sees that helicopter, I'm just like this. I'm like, all right, here we go. Here we go. Like, because you know exactly what's happening. You know what they're referencing. And there's a few of those moments. So I want to touch on some of those tie-in moments, right? So like you're saying, Masrani flies to the island. That is literally minutes into Jurassic World, where he goes and he lands and picks up Claire. So that's the first moment.
So
and
I feel like
that's
at that
a
point,
nice touchstone.
That's a visual cue to the audience to say these next couple of episodes are now going to be concurrent to the events that you know.
Yeah. So what do we have? We have a few different moments like that. Okay, so we have, and I'm probably going to go out of order and stuff like that. One of my favorite ones was like everybody's in the jungle and they're like, "Do you hear that?" And then all of a sudden, the Indominus just bursts through the trees, and it's just like it does not care that these kids are right there. Doesn't care whatsoever, just stampedes right by them, goes straight through the trees, and then you realize, hey, there's Masrani's helicopter again. And it's such an awesome moment because the helicopter is just trying to take out the Indominus, shooting at it like it does in Jurassic World, and the kids, they're hyped up because they're like, yeah, go Masrani, that's his helicopter, go take it out.
It's who's something like, that's my boy Masrani.
Yeah, and then to watch his face be so excited, and then as the pteranodons hit the wings or the blades of the helicopter, and then you just see everything unfold, explode, their faces are like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't go the way I thought. Like, and that's what everybody thinks. I thought that was brilliant, and I loved all these touchstone moments for the kids and the timeline with Jurassic World.
So I'll touch on something there that I kind of wish we had seen referenced. Okay. So if they're near the Indominus, I think it was the McDonald's map initially showed that the camp facilities are fairly close to the old visitor center. So it would have maybe been cool to see how that ATV got beaten up, that Zach and Gray end up using the battery from.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we had seen that as part of this sequence.
That is definitely something that's kind of like a little letdown. Because it would have been a very, very awesome tie-in. Because in Jurassic World, you're like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why is this thing? What is happening?
And it's just like, there's the helmet next to it, isn't it? So it would have been cool if maybe it was like a worker who was trying to find the kids and rescue them or something, and then obviously didn't rescue them.
It's like as if like the kids got a van and then went to a place and a guy stole the ATV instead, and he went off. Like that. That would have been perfect. If they had just taken that instead of that van, that would have been a pretty cool little tie-in right there. But yeah, that didn't happen. That is a shame that didn't get touched on. I actually completely forgot about that moment. But it is one of those like little lingering things in Jurassic World that could have been a nice tie-in. Doesn't destroy anything. It doesn't really matter all that much. But it's kind of like a little lost opportunity there. One that I thought was pretty brilliant though was the radios
Yeah,
in the
that was
cabinet.
cool.
So everything's going crazy. These inept, I'll say inept counselors are together. They left the kids. They're just like, hey, let's go do this stuff on our own. So
Yeah.
they left the
The kids
kids.
will be fine.
Yeah,
What's going to
they're
go
gonna.
wrong?
The kids
No
will be fine.
hybrid will break out of containment.
The kids who already broke out several times and already got into a
Yeah.
lot of mischief, they'll be fine. So they go off and they see that they like open up that cabinet, and then one by one you see these things like on the radios just get like taken out, or a red blip or something like that to kind of indicate
like
what we
lit
saw
up,
in
and then I
Jurassic
think
World.
they go dark one by one, which is really cool.
Yeah, so it's literally like kind of paralleling that ACU moment, right, in Jurassic World, where the ACU goes out to take out the Indominus, and then they notice that it took out the tracker and all that. So that was a really cool tie-in right there. I like that a lot.
I think it kind of helps to keep the timeline as well, because if you think about that moment, while they're doing this, the Indominus is occupied with the ACU, so that kind of helps to explain about why there's a gap where the Indominus first attacks the kids, and then they're kind of getting away for a little bit after the zipline collapses. And then it comes back later on because it's been occupied with the ACU, and now it's back on the hunt again, which is quite cool. And I do just want to go back to that Brachiosaur scene, because I feel like it lends a little bit to the Apatosaur scene now, because this dinosaur knows that it can kill something as big as a Brachiosaur. So if you think about it, when it sees the Apatosaurs, it's not going to hesitate about killing all of them, because they're a lesser threat to it than that Brachiosaur was.
Yeah, and it took out a lot of those apatosaurs. There's just like mounds of them, just like in the background. You just see them all over the place. But yeah, this thing is taking out things left and right. It killed the Brachiosaurus. There was like a few employees down there that were just like dead, and then some guys in like a truck or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty messed up. I was trying to think of some other impactful moments from Jurassic World. There was one where I was like, "Oh my God, is that the moment?" They're in the monorail, right? And then they hear an explosion, right? They hear this explosion, and I'm like, "Oh my God, is that the rocket launcher that killed Charlie?"
Velociraptor. Yeah,
I thought that, and I mean, it still could be, but I think they kind of confirmed that it was like monorails getting blown up or crashing.
That.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's just a pteranodon attacking the monorail. That's not going to make an explosion.
Well, if it crashed or something like that, that's I think what they were kind of alluding to.
I kind of interpreted it as, and it's interesting you say Charlie, because I think at this point the Main Street battle might have been going on. Because if you think about it, you never see any pteranodons in the air during that battle. So I wonder if they were off attacking the monorail while that was going on. And that could quite easily be the moment where I think, is it Echo gets flung into Stan Winston's grill?
Yeah, I don't know if that would create an impact that they would hear like across the park in a monorail that's traveling very fast.
It's the Indominus using her atomic breath.
Oh, maybe. I don't know, but I loved the idea that it could be Charlie getting blown up.
Yeah,
and it was like cool. It's an interesting detail because like it's a very quiet jungle, you don't really hear a lot, and then all of a sudden you hear an explosion, and they are out. It's what seems like in the middle of nowhere. So
yeah, they're over
I thought that was pretty cool. I don't remember if there were any other touchstone moments. One.
I don't think so.
There's kind of one. It kind of brushes with it. So a lot of us were questioning, who is Bumpy? Where does Bumpy come from? And we all talked about the fact that how cool would it be if Bumpy was hiding behind a tree during that moment in Jurassic World with Zach and Gray getting attacked at the gyrosphere, and then the fight breaks out or whatever with the Ankylosaurus. But it didn't exactly happen that way, but it is there. Like the moment is there. So
definitely nodded to,
and it throws you off because and it actually probably threw everybody off because they released that clip of Bumpy in the lab. So you see Bumpy, and it's like, she's just this tiny little dinosaur, and then they talk about the accelerated growth rate, which I thought was really awesome to kind of, further those kind of concepts and stuff. You don't really get to hear a lot about that, so that's really cool that they have this in there. But then the fact that they're like, well, we got to release her into the wild and hope it takes. And then later on, you do see the Camp Cretaceous kids stumble upon a gyrosphere somewhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly resemble that moment in Jurassic World. It is a bit different, but I think it's kind of like the other moments that kind of touch on like the visitor center in Jurassic World. It doesn't exactly look the same on the outside, but it is. Same with the T-Rex, throwing the truck over the
It's paying homage
the edge.
to it.
Yeah, they look similar enough where you're like, okay, I get what it is. In this one, it probably looks the least like any of those like touchstone moments. So, but that's what it's trying to showcase, and I thought that was amazing. And so now, when you watch Jurassic World, you see them getting attacked and they escape the thing. You know that probably whoever that Ankylosaurus was looking after Bumpy. Bumpy was trying to get attached and trying to grow up via that Ankylosaurus. So that was a pretty nice moment, even though it's kind of sad. So
pretty morbidly nice moment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool that you mentioned the accelerated growth as well, because honestly, and I was saying to you before the show, there's so much just from that lab section that you can really take away.
Yeah.
And there's the big thing that Bumpy is actually asymmetric, so she's not perfectly symmetrical. Obviously, what asymmetric isn't. Oh, yeah, you guys know that. It's fine.
We got
it. But she's got one horn that's like short and stumpy, and the other one's out. And I just think that's kind of really cool because A, it shows that even Wu doesn't fully understand the science, but B, I feel like that's a little hint at chaos theorem. And I think there's a lot of different moments you see throughout this series in particular where people are quite confident. They're like, this is Jurassic World. We've been doing it for like 10 years at this point. We know what we're doing. And actually, there's moments where you sit there and think, no, you don't. So I think this was one of them. And then there's a sentence where they say something like, the camp was going to have 500 kids and like 20 counselors or something. And I'm like,
wasn't it like 120 or something? Or no?
It might have been. It was like
I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I have no
smaller
clue.
number.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, you can see little things where it's not quite being planned properly, and you kind of get that hint that things are inevitably going to go wrong.
Yeah.
As Malcolm would say, which is quite cool.
Yeah. There was that moment in the lab where I don't remember the exact quote. Maybe I have it here. But what did he? Wu said something like, "Creating dinosaurs takes time." It says something with a T, something with an I, and me. And it was like so cocky, so Dr. Wu. It was exactly like what you expect from that character, and it showcases what you're talking about. That they're just so arrogant in everything that they're doing that they don't. And it's just so clear. They were across
so
the board
preoccupied
from the beginning
with whether they could. That they never stopped to think whether they should.
There you go.
So there it is.
There it is. Yeah, I guess I should have said that. But it's so clear, like from the start, that this camp is like, it takes them to the camp. They get like attacked, I guess you could say, by a compy. So there's like compies out there. They're so relaxed with like these camp counselors are very relaxed with everything. Like kids are getting out of the gyrospheres in the middle of the valley where dinosaurs just walked through. Like they're leaving them unattended. They're, so this is just a bad idea from the start. Yeah. And I don't mean from like a filmmaking standpoint. I just think from a Jurassic World standpoint, this is just such a bad idea, that whatever they're trying to do. And sure, it's like a test and they're kind of VIP people and stuff like that. So maybe they're expecting more from them. But things just go bad like the entire time. And actually one of those moments is when they leave Kenji and Darius to just shovel dino poop on their own. And then they just go and do other stuff at the lab. And they're like, you kids will be fine out here in the jungle by yourself. Like,
where did that dino poop come from? A dinosaur must be able to access that area.
Seriously. So what, like, they're just so inept at everything. And I love those two characters. Don't get me wrong. Roxy and Dave, they're fun. Dave is hilarious. Roxy's pretty awesome. And I think like, they had good intentions, like everybody does in these movies, but they, like I said before, they just like, they're like, I forget why did they go off to
find Claire.
but why did they go to find Claire?
because they couldn't get her on the radio, I think. So they said it
Yeah,
would be easier to just go and get her.
just
Because
go.
this was
Yeah,
before. So this was before
it was before
they
the
try and get
breakout
a
and
hold of
everything.
her. Yeah, basically, what the way I perceived it, they're trying to get a hold of her while she's gone up to the Indominus paddock with Masrani. So
Hmm.
they're just getting told that she's not available. So they're like, okay, we'll go and talk to her. Meanwhile, obviously, Claire's in kind of stuck in the start of these events, which ultimately end up with the
Yeah,
Indominus breaking out.
yeah.
Which I really like that. I was, and I we can touch on it a little bit later. I don't know how long you want this to go, but if we get time, I'll bring it up.
Who
Um,
knows?
but I think for the most part, this runs really nicely alongside Jurassic World, and there's
Hmm.
like moments where you can feel the stories overlap and touch each other, but it doesn't feel forced at all. It feels like it makes sense and it kind of fits, and I
Hmm.
think that's a nice example. Like we said earlier, Masrani flying in is a nice example. Seeing the aviary again is a cool moment. It all just kind of helps to sort of, as an adult fan, kind of sit back and go, oh, okay, mentally I can picture that this is where I am in the film timeline right now, which is quite cool.
Yeah, and one of the things that kind of surprised me was the fact that, hey, we only got Doctor Wu. That was the only
Yeah.
cameo. Like, and that was very
Where was
surprising.
Lowry?
Where were any of these characters that you could have thrown in there? I'm not saying that's a fault or an issue. I'm just saying, like, I expected like some more. I
Yeah,
for sure thought Owen would be there because they're so hyped on that character. They love stamping him. You got to sell him. You got to sell him. You got to put him on everything. You know, he's on every lunchbox and every shirt and every toy package. So I just thought he would be there. And of course,
Yeah.
you know, the moment that they fall into the compy pen, the raptor pen, I'm like, okay, he's gonna save them. It's literally gonna be the exact same thing that happens one day later or whatever,
Yeah.
pretty much. But no, they subverted that, and they just, you know, Dave saved them, and Brooklyn helped save them a little bit. So, yeah, so I was just surprised that these little touchstone moments didn't include a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
Not even, I thought maybe there would be a way to bring in Mizrani, but, you know, we see him flying over, but you don't actually see him. But yeah, just surprising we didn't get one of the two major leads, Claire or Owen. Like I talked about a lot ahead of the show. I had glimpsed Fast and Furious, whatever that show is. I forget what it's called. Created by the same people and stuff like that. So I thought, you know, hey, if Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel himself was in that first episode that I saw, they gotta have Owen, right? Like he's gotta be here.
Yeah.
But no, he wasn't there. So yeah, just surprising, I guess.
I liked it though. I didn't feel like it needed them, which is cool. Because I think that's always the big risk with a franchise like Jurassic, especially where you've only got 5 films. You kind of have a very limited net of characters that people are connected with, and I think because you've got such a limited connection, it then makes it harder to start afresh. But I feel like this actually did that really well, which was cool.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. I think it was the better idea to not include them, to include somebody like Dr. Wu, expand his character, and just put the others on the back seat. I thought that was pretty good. Because, like I said, we get so much of them; they're plastered everywhere. I expected them, but I'm actually glad that they weren't there because it made it for you know, a different experience. But we got a lot of these. We got a lot of like. You know, I think they were fun characters. Otherwise, I think, you know, all the main characters, you know, all the kids and the camp counselors were all really cool. Kenji is somebody that like stood out to me. I actually I wasn't sure if I would connect with him, but like I thought he was pretty funny. Like he had a lot of very funny moments throughout the show. I'm just like laughing at him. I'm partially laughing at him, laughing with him. One of the moments was like, I think him and Darius are fighting in like episode 2 when they're shoveling the dino poop, and you know Darius is just like, this has been my dream. This is my dream to come to this park and see dinosaurs. And Kenji's just like, he's like, that's not a dream. A dream is like when you save a bunch of mermaids from a shark. And I was just like, what? It's so ridiculous, but it just made me laugh
Kenji
so hard.
is definitely a little bit older than Darius.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that was a nice, you know, varied, you know, style of character throughout all the different ones. And of course, I guess we should mention Sammy, right? Being the mole here, being the
Yeah.
infiltrator, the spy of the group. Which as I was watching it just before this recording, I had noticed something interesting. They start the show. She's got on like a leather jacket or something like that, covering up her jacket or her shirt. And then later on, you see the shirt underneath. It's like this very flowery kind of shirt. And I was looking at it. I was like, that does look familiar. I was like, oh, it looks like those socks that I have that are like those Dennis Nedry socks, because I have like the Dennis Nedry
Yeah.
shirt style socks, and I'm like, oh, that's fun. Oh, I'm like, oh, that looks like the Dennis Nedry shirt. The one that he has at the cafe in the beginning of the movie with Dodgson. And I'm like, oh my God, that could not have been on accident, right? There's no way that was an accident making those two characters have a similar style there, because she turns out to be what he was, stealing the samples and trying to get them
successful.
out. She's very much more successful. So yeah, and that's an interesting note. She's successful in that. So where does that go? Those samples
we know that
go out to Manticore.
It's the USB, isn't it? I don't think she sent. I don't think she got as far as sending the samples off.
Oh, did she not get the samples out?
Done. Okay, I know that it was the USB she plugged into the drone.
She did that. I mean, yeah, we didn't see anything else, but later on she took some sort of sample with the Sinoceratops, right?
Yeah, but actually thinking about it, the USB was from Wu's lab. So we have no idea what was on there. There could be potentially hybrid information on there, because it was the same place that he was working on the Indominus. There could potentially be stuff to do with a Spinosaurus, because that appears on the screen in that lab. So there could... I almost wonder, and this is me just going completely off script here, but we know that for ages people have wanted Spinosaurus back. I wonder if this could be a way to do it. If they go, between 2015 and now, Manticore, which is the biogenetics company that she's getting this stuff from, maybe they've managed to reverse engineer one. Because it really feels like this is setting up the idea of, while we know Biosyn will be in Dominion, there may potentially be other companies. And I think the fact that that interview that I'm sure you saw that came out with Colin either yesterday or today, it point blank says that this will lead directly into Dominion. So I think that suggests that Manticore will definitely be a part of that as well. I have no idea what you're doing.
Sorry, I was looking for my my book for the evolution of Claire, and I don't seem to have it right here on me. But talking about another company, Manticore.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting because this was like one of the last. I think it was like one of the last things I kind of teased about. The issues with the show, because we had to come up with some issues. I know we had a hard time kind of doing that. We didn't really have a lot of issues with it. But one of the things was I felt like there's a lot of samey type stuff going on here. It's like, okay, well, we got another thing that's doing this same exact thing. So after reading The Evolution of Claire, there's some, I do not remember the exact details. Probably should have got that ahead of time. But there's like a character or two characters or something that are trying to get information off for some sort of pharmaceutical company or something like that. So I'm like, what? Like, how many companies are trying to get the information out, or trying to steal their information, trying to take down Jurassic World? Now, granted, The Evolution of Claire happens way before all this, 15 years before all this. So, it's interesting because, you have Biosyn back in 93 trying to do it. I don't know if there's probably some other people out there during the meantime until whatever happens in The Evolution of Claire. And then you have, Manticore here trying to do something. And then we have Biosyn returning. So it's like, and then obviously all those companies or individuals, whoever they were in Fallen Kingdom, that are buying dinosaurs and whatnot. So there's a lot of entities involved.
Yeah, I think you've got to just think of it as well as, obviously, a film is a sliver of that fictional universe. So in all of these films, we've been following it essentially from InGen's perspective, with what's happened with their parks, what's happened with their dinosaurs. There's no reason why other stuff couldn't have been going on in the background at different organizations that we've just never seen.
And that's kind of scared me.
Pardon?
That's kind of scared me because one day
Yeah.
I kind of expect them to be like, oh, well, yeah, like we only been focusing on InGen and Jurassic World and these people, but guess what, guys? This entire time, there's been, some other
Yeah.
Mesozoic park or something, down the road. We just didn't tell
Yeah.
you there's all these other creatures and dinosaurs and whatever it is down the road.
There's Permian Park and it's
yeah,
just fossils.
just two
It's
islands
just
across,
trilobites.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that does not happen. I'm okay with them saying, hey, other people did eventually create dinosaurs, and we find that out in Dominion that
Yeah.
no, there's no park. No, they're not like selling these things like for amusement. But there's other nefarious stuff going down. So I would be okay with that. But I would not be okay if they're like, hey, there's other parks around the world with other companies. It's like, you have Walt Disney World, you have Universal Studios, you have Six Flags. It's like, I hope that's not the case with Jurassic.
Yeah.
Well,
there is a way that they could do it. Mr. Stentz, if you're listening, please just get ready to make some notes. It's not a good idea at all. But you could. So obviously there's been a lot of speculation that after this we may get a live action series at some point in the future.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people said that if we do it, will probably tie into Dominion. What if that's a prequel series? You could call it something like The Miracle of DNA and have it explore how other companies have got to the point that they're at in that film where they've got dinosaurs. So you could have flashbacks to Biosyn on Isla Sorna, for example. You could have a live action rendition of this moment with the Manticore drone coming in, for example. I think there's the issue is always going to inherently be that Jurassic was never intended to be a franchise. And when you look at Jurassic Park, it's very much a standalone film, and there is setup for it. But even sort of in the initial stages, we know that Crichton only wrote a sequel because Spielberg wanted one.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like while retroactive storytelling isn't natural, it's something that maybe we'll have to be more accepting of because it's sort of the only way that they can do it at this point.
It's literally
themselves into the corner.
Yeah, it's literally the only way things have ever happened with this series.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey guys, there's a second island. Oh, hey guys, you remember that second island?
You haven't heard of Lockwood?
There's other dinosaurs on that island. There's another guy Lockwood, who's helping support this. Like, so there's all these things that just say, hey, oh,
you heard of Dr.
guys.
Wu? Well, this is Dr. Woo Woo.
Little did we know he's actually like his twin or something. He's just not as smart as Dr. Wu, but another thing that go ahead. You can mention what you're going to say.
So I was going to say, and I'm probably taking this in a complete different direction to what you were going to go in.
I'll try to remember.
But so obviously we're talking about how it's going to tie into Dominion. Something that really spoke to me is the fact that recently Jeff Goldblum said that there were some script changes happening because some of it was deemed a little bit sensitive for the current sort of climate that we find ourselves in. Now, obviously, we're in a pandemic currently, and a big part... No way, I know, Brad, I'm sorry to break it to you.
What? We are?
Have you not looked outside?
No, there's no windows in
I know
this
you
room.
spend a lot of time in that recording basement, but...
There's no windows. How am I supposed to tell? No communication to the outside world.
Your communication is just Twitter. And once Steve Cream happened, that was it. Game over. I told you I'd get it in somewhere.
Yeah, you
did. So, a big part of the original kind of lore behind the films is the DX virus, and the idea that if the dinosaurs don't get their lysine, isn't it, then they'll die within a certain amount of time. So, on the monitor in Dr. Wu's lab, we see something that is the E750 clinical trial results. And I kind of was taken back by this because I was like, they've been doing dinosaurs and hybrids for a while now. Are they going to need clinical results? And so I did a Google search, and the Indominus Rex is referenced as A75, so not E75 or E750. So I almost wonder if this is a prelude to some kind of contingency coming into place and maybe we're experimenting with a way to control the dinosaurs that they then may end up using in Dominion.
Man, I don't. It's a lot to kind of theorize on. I don't know, man. Like I think maybe there is something to all of these other companies being involved. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe Biosyn is the one who comes to save the day, or Manticore or something like that, or whatever. Like maybe they're the ones who kind of fix the problem. But yeah, that is an interesting point about some things being sensitive, so they might have to change some. Honestly, I've been out of the loop on a lot of the news recently, so you know, a new baby in the house, it's kind of hard to keep up. But yes, that is pretty interesting. I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's the clinical trial thing that throws me off, because I don't think they do it for a dinosaur. So
and they
clinical
called that
trials
out.
traditionally are things for like vaccines, and it's the point that on his computer, apart from the secret file, this is the only other thing that's legible. So that suggests to me that it's got to be a hint towards something that's coming in the future.
Now, because I rewatched it again, was there anything that was written down and said clinical trial? I know Brooklyn called it out, but everything else, like you're saying, was indecipherable. It literally looks like some sort of hieroglyphics or something like that.
The folding on the computer screen you can read.
Oh, the formula. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I did. I was able to read that. Yeah.
Read it,
okay.
And that's about it, though. It's just a thing and then the thing on the screen.
Yeah. And that formula, somewhere I think around there was like a picture of like a Brachiosaurus that was like kind of drawn out. And then you had a Carnotaurus, you had an Indominus, Spinosaurus. So yeah, there was so much going on there. Not a lot of confirmation, but a lot of ideas, a lot of direction, a lot of ways to go, I think, for the future.
You touch on something really cool, actually, because obviously they're up on the whiteboard. But when she goes into the folder that's got the hybrids in on the computer, the first thing that pops up before the Indominus is the Spinosaurus. So I kind of interpret that as them soft confirming that wasn't a normal dinosaur, because obviously in the Masrani back door, it says that Wu left an accident on Sauna, but it doesn't say what it was. So it could have been the Spino, it could have been something else. It's open-ended. But I think this is kind of hinting that this was him experimenting with genetics and it went wrong. And again, that's reinforced by, like you said, the bioluminescent Parasaurolophus, because there was no reason for him to really do that and introduce that idea in the first place. He just did it for the sake of it. So it's clear that he's always wanted to push the boundaries and kind of experiment with new things.
Yeah, the way that Masrani is presented in like the Lego stuff, he seems to latch onto a lot of ideas and things that are not necessarily what they were intended for and stuff like that. So I could see, Wu experimenting to try to create these hybrids and do crazy things. And then he ends up creating these bioluminescent things. He ends up mentioning it to Masrani, and Masrani's like, oh, that would make a great, nighttime parade. Let's throw it out there. Let's do that. So I could see something like that happening. But, the route I was going to take earlier was the fact that it also in this lab, which it's funny because I forget what episode it was, like episode 6 or 7. They go back to the lab, right? They try to find a safe haven there. And it reminded me so much of the season finale of season finale of the first season of The Walking Dead, when all these characters, all these characters find safe haven in the CDC, right? They go to the CDC. They're like, who better to protect us from this disease than the CDC? So they go in there, and it just turns out to be one lone guy, right? And that's exactly what happens here. Cake. Yeah. Did they both? No, they didn't both have birthday cakes, did they? No.
He had one. It was
this guy did, but no, don't fool me. I do not remember much about the Walking Dead one. I'm like, no, did he have a birthday cake too? Come on. Okay. So, but the birthday cake kind of like, and that sequence lends him to be a little like out of his mind, kind of like a little crazy in that moment. And that's exactly what happened in The Walking Dead. They couldn't trust this guy. And the same thing happened here. The guy just escapes and goes off on his own, and dies instantly. But, but before that, he mentions that he was working with somebody else. So, a thing that it didn't necessarily happen in any sense. I was maybe looking for some answers, but I didn't expect a lot, was the fact that like I would hope that things get tied up with all of these unanswered questions between Jurassic World, between Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and this show, and hopefully it gets resolved, in the next film. I don't know. But the fact that all of these people are working with somebody else, but we don't necessarily know what are these connections?
Could be different people.
It could be all different people. We don't really know. I mean, it could have been Eddie was working with Manticore. I don't know. But it could be that he was working with Vic Hoskins, who was working with, all of these dots connecting, because that's the way I would much rather prefer that all of these dots connect, like all the way back to Mills, to these characters in the live tour, and to maybe they all point back to Biosyn. I don't know, but I think it would be cool to kind of have all these dots connect.
I'm gonna drop an idea for you. It's gonna blow. I can't even talk. Blow your brain, Mr. Jost.
Will it? Let's see.
In the genetics community, and this is well established in the novels, Biosyn are quite negatively regarded, aren't they? Because they steal a lot of genetics, and they basically steal and pilfer other people's research. Mm-hmm. And we know this in the novels because Dodgson has a reputation. The last time we saw Biosyn was 1993. Is it not entirely possible that they have rebranded since then?
Yeah, I mean, that is possible. There is a moment in the show. I don't know. I don't remember how it was said, if it was specifically said like this, but, we do know that they're a bioengineering company. They're rivals with Masrani, and Wu beat them to dinosaurs. So if they're rivals with Masrani, that's like kind of a late game thing. Like they're rivals with Masrani. But if Wu beat them to dinosaurs, that goes back a long time.
That's
so Wu beat them to dinosaurs maybe back in the 90s. So it could be like, could Manticore be around with Biosyn back in the early days? Sure.
They could just be a subsidy at the same company.
It could be the same company, or like you're saying, they've rebranded. We don't. I forget what the DPG site said about Nedry or anything about if any of that stuff was revealed. I forget, like in the public. But maybe if there was some bad blood back then and they ended up, closing that company down and restarting it, kind of like, what do you call it with Cobra Kai? It's like, Cobra Kai got some bad, press back in the day, and then the guy's like, I'm going to reopen it now. Yeah. So maybe they're like, what? Dodgson's like, it's time to reopen. Let's forget about Manticore and let's go with Biosyn. I like this name better.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible. It makes sense. I feel like there's got to be something else there, because to suddenly introduce so many companies, especially, might I add, if it's another different company sending this guy to the island in Jurassic World Aftermath, then it's so many different companies. So it just makes sense that they might be a little bit more connected than they seem.
Well, plus we can't forget there was also one other instance of people going to the island. There was a reporter that went to the island just before the Fallen Kingdom incident too, and she had a podcast. So there's people are just like heading out there. Yeah. No, it was Chad from the live tour.
Chad. So.
See, I feel like we're just derailing it now. All right, so what else do we have? Do we have anything else? I did want to point out the whole sequence with Darius's dad. I thought Darius, had a very emotional story arc here. I think a lot of the kids did, but specifically with Darius and his dad, like that whole episode was just such a bummer, man. Like, it
really was.
And the fact that this park ended up being a catastrophe and not what, they always expected or imagined is so sad to me. They had planned this, they had planned the trip to eventually get out there, and then his dad gets sick and dies, and, the brother and the mom are looking after him, and, it's very sad. He had this hope to go to the park and live this moment without his dad and just kind of do something fun and just, it was very sad. It was a very sad moment. So I was kind of shocked and surprised by the emotion thrown into the show.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I think it perfectly encapsulates Jurassic, which is
Hmm.
the idea of this illusion of something being this sense of wonder and awe, and actually it being much more terrifying. And I
Yeah.
think that in that regard, it communicates it perfectly. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I
And
definitely feel like that was good.
yeah, and ultimately, all of these stories are about family and relationships and connections and stuff like that. And this would be it would be weird if there was no connection, to some sort of
Yeah,
family issue. And in this case, Darius being the main character, he has, his dad is gone. And,
yeah,
even throughout the show, you do hear a lot about Kenji's family, his dad not paying attention to him. You don't really know how much of his stories are true, but I feel like
yeah.
on the surface, he's probably telling a lot of the truth.
I
Even,
wonder if his dad's Ian Malcolm.
you think so? You think
And I
his
mean, it's possible.
his dad owns a penthouse on Jurassic World, Dr. Ian Malcolm? I don't know. Would he do that? I don't think so. But Sammy's family too. There
Yeah.
somebody's sick or something in her family. I forget specifically, but they were
No,
kind
they
of
were going to lose
blackmailing.
their ranch. They were going to lose the
Oh,
ranch.
okay.
So they were like, that's the whole motivation for her doing Manticore. And there's like, you say emotional beats. There's this really heavy beat with her actually, where
Hmm.
she's talking to Darius about it. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry your family put you up for this. And she's like, no, I
Oh,
did
yeah.
this for my family because I don't want them to suffer.
Yeah, they
They
said
didn't
no.
want me
Yeah.
to do this. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
so
thought
her
that that was quite heavy.
her family, I guess, supplies the meat for the park, and
Yeah.
I forget specifically if that's like for like Winston Steakhouse or for like feeding maybe she feeds the dinosaurs or I don't know. But her
Yeah.
family, I guess I have it here in my notes now that the ranch is in trouble. Her folks borrowed some money, and it turned out to be like a front for Manicore or something.
Yeah.
So they'll lose everything unless she spies. But her family turned that down, and that, she went behind their back and everything. So everybody has
Yeah.
some sort of connection to the park, and hers is pointed out really quickly. It's like in the first episode, it's like, oh, my family provides the meat, so she's like gets it out in the open that she has this nice little tie. It's very convenient. It's and then Kenji's dad is just rich, I guess, and he has a thing there, and then Brooklyn has 20 something million followers or something like that, so she gets
Yeah.
a free ride. And Yaz is sponsored, I guess, by the park for her running.
Yeah.
And who else? Is there anybody
Ben
else? Oh,
has got
Ben.
his mum who works for Masrani.
Yeah. So everybody's got a tie there. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those moments, Ben, I don't feel like he has a lot of, you know, uh, shift in his character too much. I think Brooklyn has a lot of emotional
Mm,
moments.
I'd
Brooklyn's pretty
argue
emotional.
that I was going to say I'd argue that Bumpy is a catalyst for a change in Ben. So
Sure.
Ben becomes very close with Bumpy in the later half,
Ben's
and
an
I feel
interesting
like
character.
pardon?
He's an interesting character because
Yeah.
he's shown to be this like afraid kid, but almost at every moment he like talks back and he says his
Yeah.
thing. Like he's not like a shy kid or anything like that. He's not like afraid too much, even though that's what they're kind of presenting it as. So he does, I guess you could say, yeah, he does kind of like rise up and take care of something outside of himself
Yeah.
or something. But yeah, Sammy has her shift in character, revealing her backstory, and Brooklyn, dealing with the stress of being a public figure and stuff like that. So everybody has like a
Relatable
little
for you
something they go
after your
through.
recent success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I enjoyed all these characters, and I thought they all had
Yeah, same.
something to add to the show, and I thought they're very fun. So
I
that's a
would
good thing.
agree with that. Yeah.
Um,
I think that it's quite a nice diverse cast of characters here. And on the subject of characters, both Grant and Sattler get name dropped in the
yeah, they
series,
do.
which is awesome. And this kind of adds a little bit to why they're still doing stuff with dinosaurs when Dominion comes round, because we
Mhm.
find out that Ellie's doing a blog to do with paleobotany, and Grant is doing a dinosaur blog. So it's quite cool to kind of
Yeah.
get that little hint at what might be coming.
Yeah, somebody like uploads his latest article to the forums or
Yeah,
Jurassic World forums. Like, so I love that. I love those little details of like, hey, there's a Jurassic World forum that people are
yeah,
uploading, you know, these big people's articles to. So that's pretty cool. It feels real. It feels like something that all of us would do. You know, we're gonna go and upload it to the Jurassic World Facebook group or something. You know, so
yeah,
it feels very real. So I appreciated that, and it was
yeah,
nice to get those little mentions, and it didn't feel too on the nose. One of the moments that felt on the nose was like Dave said something about like, what are they cooking up in the lab or something, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's like, all right, that's like very, very on the nose. They
Quite
literally
what
said
Owen
those
said.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I I was going to say I kind of have two sort of final points that I wanted to talk about.
mhm.
Um, One thing which I keep going back and forth on, and I mentioned actually three things. So the first thing I mentioned to you before we started recording, and it's the way the camp gets destroyed. So
Oh yeah,
spoilers.
yeah.
At the end of
Wait,
I think it's
spoilers?
episode 4,
We've been talking about
and
spoilers this whole time, man.
yeah.
It's too
Well,
late if you're
at
here.
the if you've made it this far without being spoilt too much, get ready. Um, so at the end of episode 4 and the start of episode 5, the camp gets destroyed.
Uh-huh.
And this is the thing where in our non-spoiler episode, I thought it was a little bit over dramatized
Yeah,
because
yeah.
at this point the pteranodons haven't broken out, so it's just the Indominus, and the camp is trashed. And bear in mind, this is like high up in the trees. Like you were saying, you've got a bridge that's collapsed, the elevator's all smashed. It just, and like one of the
Yeah.
buildings has been flipped out of the tree and has fallen onto the ground below. I just, that seemed a little bit, I don't know, too destructive to me.
Yeah, and that was a moment where I thought they were going to go a little bit deeper because he left his Darius left his necklace or something up
Yeah,
there, and they didn't really resolve that. I thought kind of like that was another
he just
sad
flipped
point. He
it,
had
didn't he? Yeah,
Yeah, he had this like, matching necklace with his dad, and his, obviously his dad died. I'm sure he like probably buried it with him, and now he has this necklace that like is just trashed somewhere, and I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. Does he have it on there? Oh, he's
yeah.
not showing up at all.
Well, it's on the Mattel figure, guys. I
It's on the
promise.
figure.
Yeah,
So that was a bummer, but yeah, you're right. Like, how does that thing fall? When you had brought it up to me, I was like, okay, maybe, probably he probably like banged his head into the tree or something.
yeah,
Which, sure, I guess that would maybe do it. I don't know, but and I thought maybe he knocked the elevator because there's like an elevator attached to the tree. But when I
yeah,
look back, I'm like, oh no, the elevator's still there. How did that fall? I have no clue. It wasn't
yeah.
attached to the zip line. It was like its own thing. The zip line was like
Yep.
through the woods a little ways. So, yeah, how did that fall? I have no clue. Maybe there was some stanchion that we didn't see off to the side, but yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the other things, spoiler wise, and this is something that again I alluded to a lot in our last video, is the canonicity of the time frame. And there's
Mm,
one specific moment which is kind of very on the nose to me, which is where they are at the Mosasaur Arena because
mm,
they're there as it turns to nighttime. And if you remember the Main Street Pteranodon battle, just kind of along the waterfront, takes place at, I would say, in the afternoon with the lighting. So it's
mm.
just before they would have got there. Owen and Claire and everyone race back off to the raptor paddock, but all of the security personnel would have still been around there because they were rounding people up and taking them to the hotel. So it just seems a little bit strange to me
Yeah.
that there wasn't somebody around there who scooped the kids up.
Yeah, that is odd. I mean, it kind of is the constraints of creating a show. It's like I think
Yeah,
even the Scott and Aaron mentioned that they can't have 100 extras and stuff like that, in
yeah,
the
exactly.
show. So that's one of those glaring moments where and honestly, even to the end, the very very end of the show, you're kind of
Yeah,
like, really, like. Nobody, there's nobody here,
yeah,
nobody around anywhere, so it's a slight stretch. And I don't know, the timing, it works for me. I don't really see too much of an issue. I think like as long as they say that they got those people out of Main Street and put them somewhere else or got them to the docks, at that moment, the alarm is going off, right? There's an alarm, and that's
Yeah,
what was that alarm for? That was an alarm to say,
it was like an evacuation alarm.
yeah. So they're already trying to get people to the boats. So I guess I don't know where the pteranodons went though. Like that doesn't, maybe they just
Yeah,
followed everybody, I guess. And then we see that they are attacking the monorails because of the lighting in the monorails. So would they have
yeah,
attacked the monorails transporting people to the docks during the day? Maybe if it was a moving creature in their eyes, maybe they
yeah,
thought they could attack it during the day too. I don't know. But it doesn't really bother me too much. But I could see how that could be a little bit of an issue. And the fact that
yeah,
like no employees are around, nobody's left behind. There's not like, well, the thing is, here going back to this point, there are people still there because we do see them
mhm,
when they do go back to the lab, Claire and Owen and the kids. There's
yeah,
and I make fun of this moment all the time because they wander in, there's zero people around, nobody
yeah.
there, and then all of a sudden there's people closing things, and you're like, wait, what? Where did these people just come
Yeah,
from? Like,
exactly.
so it's
So
kind of
that's
like
like
that.
InGen rounding it all up at that point. And I
Yeah.
mean, even then, I'd make the point that there must still be something that happens after that point, because if you remember in Fallen Kingdom, there's a wrecked Jurassic World Jeep on Main Street, and I'm like,
Hmm.
well, yeah, you can argue a dinosaur might have kicked it there, but isn't it more likely at some point after the
Uh-huh.
battle? Somebody had to come there and do something before they left.
That's
And
Jurassic
then
World
obviously
Aftermath,
it got
dude.
wrecked afterwards. So yeah, well, there is a flipped over Jeep in that trailer, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes, and this is me, it's me being really picky, if I'm honest, because a
It's
lot
you
of this
being
stuff
like,
is,
yeah, it's as being as hardcore of a fan as you can try to be and
yeah,
try to, like we're saying, we're talking about these things for hours, so we have to kind of parse out all these little details. So don't
yeah.
worry about it.
And I
You're all
would
good.
say at the end of the day, stuff like that Jeep, for example, sometimes you do just have to accept it's something because it looks cool. It's a nice piece of set dressing. It helps to immerse you in that world.
Yeah.
So I'm all right with that. I just yeah, it's kind of like that thing where I'm like, I get that they wanted to incorporate the mosasaur and have the lagoon in the series, but I think that doing it in season one just makes it parallel a little bit too close to the events of Jurassic World. Like
Yeah.
say for example, like they didn't get to the bottom of the island at the end of season one, and at season two, once rescues left, they're trying to get down here, and that's when it happens. I just feel
Yeah.
like then you have a little bit more flexibility to do more stuff with that.
Yeah.
But I guess they could revisit it in the
Yeah,
future.
it is weird because you do have the camp counselors trying their hardest to try to get people to go out and find the kids, and then there's this guy who's like, "No, you cannot leave here
Yeah,
whatsoever. I will physically take you." And he like has
the shock
whatever that thing.
stick. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm going to take you and put you on the boat myself." So, they're making a point to say that like literally everybody's going to be gone. And yeah, you're right. It kind of, maybe it would have been better to wait until the second season or something to
yeah,
explore that portion. Yeah, like you're saying, maybe make them stuck up somewhere up north or in the midsection of the park. But yeah, it is weird, but it doesn't really bother me all that much. The fact that there's like zero people around is more, strange to me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I get that.
and they like
Um,
just missed it. They like literally like just missed the
yeah,
boat. So like zero.
it's
Come
like
on,
that comical,
nobody.
convenient timing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a little weird. What else was I gonna say? Oh, I don't know.
I have one more thing I can slide
Go
in
ahead.
with.
You go in there.
Um, Toro is most likely in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom
Mm,
because
yeah,
this, and I think if you had the reaction I did, I was watching it and it's in like the last 5 minutes of the episode. So I
yeah,
was like, and this is the last episode. I was like, we've got all of the nods we're going to get at this point. We've got everything that happens. There's an explosion because Toro's closing in on the kids and they're trying to get rid of it. And obviously, it's still alive, but it's injured, so it wants to limp off. And as it gets up, you realize that not only has the explosion gone off, but all of its skin is now blackened and charred, and it
yeah.
looks exactly like the demon Carnotaurus that's in Lockwood Manor at the end of Fallen Kingdom.
It's
I
pretty
saw
pretty
that.
amazing.
Yeah, I genuinely think there were like a couple of moments where I let out a shout, and I think with that I went, "That's so cool!" And then I was like, "Nobody in this house will even know what I'm on about." But wow,
Yeah. Oh, I was I was cheering myself because not only is it a moment where these kids have to save themselves, have to get out of this situation, they come up with a crazy plot and a plan, and the thing just explodes. And yeah, that moment when it just like rises from the ash, you think it's dead, and then it
yeah,
comes back to life, and you're like, that's it. Oh, I see what you're doing here. Like you just notice what they're doing, and it's really, really cool. I mean, I hope that's what they were doing. It really seems like it,
I think it is,
because
yeah.
it looks spot on for what you see at the end of Fallen Kingdom there. So that, and if they made that toy, I'd buy that one in a second. I haven't actually gotten the Toro one just yet, but if they made
I
like,
was gonna grab it, but it won't show up. So
yeah, probably not. If they made like the burn Toro, that would be really, really cool.
yeah,
And of course, it's a spoiler, so maybe at some point it will come out, but luckily not in the first wave. So,
yeah. I do think there's an interesting thing to be said on toys, actually,
mhm.
which is it's clear that there's a multi-season plan for this
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
characters like Grim, for example, who's about to
uh-huh.
come out as a Soundstrike Baryonyx. Baryonyx as a dinosaur doesn't appear at all in season one, so it's
No,
clear that there's a longer term plan here, and that may be where dinosaurs like Ceratosaurus, which I know a lot of people were excited to see in some of the marketing,
yeah,
might hopefully pop up as well.
yeah. I've actually felt very bad recently, like knowing
Yes,
that a lot of these dinosaurs are not there, and then seeing the conversation online. I think I probably maybe shouldn't have asked the question, but I asked the question like, what dinosaurs are you excited to see? Not that I
yeah,
was like breaking an embargo or anything, but I was just more disappointed with the answers because everybody's like, oh, Ceratosaurus, Baryonyx. Like, I'm like,
yeah,
and they're like, Rexy. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
like how
yeah,
I'm shocked again. Like I was saying with Owen and Claire, I'm shocked that Rexy was not in this outside of a
yeah.
video game, which was interesting.
Actually,
I mean,
yeah,
and then of course the intro or outro, I forget what it was of the episode.
intro,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, the intro.
I
So
am.
that was pretty
I'm
interesting that it
actually
wasn't there.
really impressed that they
Hmm.
did that. So
Same.
if you think about it, out of any of the dinosaurs, she's probably the one who we have a kind of good track record for where she. Well, no, we know where she is because right up until the nighttime sequence, she's in her paddock the whole time. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't have made sense for them to have her out at all. So I'm glad that they didn't, and they kind of stuck
unless
by that.
unless they went through a utilidor and popped out and they're like, oh, we're in the T-Rex
Yeah.
paddock,
Oh,
like so.
hi, Rexy, and then she
Yeah.
has like a 5 minute sequence. They go back through. I will
So
say,
it's interesting. Yeah, they could have done that instead of going like Toro earlier on in the show,
yeah,
but I'm glad that they did keep it separate.
yeah, so am I. And I kind of, and I'm in the same boat as you. I feel bad because I literally yesterday did a post saying, "Who's excited to see the Raptor Squad back together?"
Oh, another
I,
set. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of, so we basically get 2 minutes of screen time at the Raptor Squad, if that. I
Yeah,
kind
if
of
that.
wish we
Yeah.
hadn't got that because it feels weird that they were able to get into that paddock so easily, considering it's high security, Project Icarus, all of that kind of stuff.
Again,
And
though, it's like
also,
where are all the people? It's the fact
yeah,
that they just didn't create the assets for extras, So
yeah,
there
exactly.
there would
Um,
100% be like two guards at least on
yeah,
top at all times. You know,
yeah,
that's 100% what
exactly.
what it would be like. But in this case, they must have been sleeping. I don't know.
Yeah, like all at the same time. There's no Owen
Yeah,
there. There's no
yeah.
Barry. Everyone's just
Nope.
gone. But also with that sequence, it kind of that is the one thing where I would use the phrase shoehorned in because I kind of feel
Hmm.
like when you look at the topography of Nublar, to go from the camp to what is a cliff's edge facility at the Raptor paddock, those kids must have sprinted through the night like to get there.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. They said it was like, not that far away. So who knows? Like, I don't really know where the camp even is, to be honest. Did they show exactly where it is, or
There's
it's
a
just a
map out there that
roundabout?
shows it. Yeah.
Is there? Yeah, it's just it's odd when there's no employees like in certain areas, and like we're saying about the counselors, they're just like letting them have free reign of a lot of stuff. So yeah, I guess it's just kind of the confines of the show in a way. Yeah, you're right. It does, kind of feels shoehorned in. It's like we have to get this raptor pack in there, and it's so funny because, when I was talking with the producers again, go back and listen to that interview. I mentioned like the poster that was like completely different assets on there, and then also the teaser trailer with the raptor, and it's like it turns out that none of those things were things at all. They were just concept art, and then a test of what they could do. And it turns out, that raptor, which we tried to figure out, who is this raptor? Which raptor is it? Is it Charlie? Is it, what is it? And then it turns out that
it's a green one. It's one of the universal generic green ones. There's more raptors.
And then the show starts and you're like, oh, those are different raptor. What is going on here? And it turns out that none of that mattered. They're just like, it was just a test, and the raptor squad is barely in the show, at all.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because it gives, I guess it doesn't give the Raptor Squad much to do, but it gives Blue something to do next season, if that comes to that, and it gives Rexy something to do next season.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there could be another interaction with the Mosasaurus or something like that. Maybe at some point during the timeline between Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, the island shifts and the lagoon moves more towards the edge. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the story of how that happened. Yeah,
I have to admit, when I noticed that we were back to the Jurassic World layout for it, I was like, people are going to kick off.
yeah. I don't. I'm just going to say that I have no idea. Maybe Mill's information was off. That's what it has to come to.
The island in Fallen Kingdom is actually Isla Muerta. That had an identical park with identical assets.
Yeah, I don't know. So at the end of the day, the kids, and I talked about this on their non-spoiler episode, something I was like, it's a little bit of a stretch to say that like all of these kids just straight up jump out of this monorail that's like high in the sky and they're fine and all that, but like it's okay. I'm not too fussed about it. But so Bumpy and all the characters fall out. One of them falls. All the other ones jump. Yeah. Bumpy gets spread away from the main crew. Ends up coming across Ben in the middle of the jungle during the daytime. So the next day. So what do you think happens here? Like what? Yeah. What happens? They're stuck on the island. Zero people. There's zero people around. What happens here?
Well, I think there's a few things that are going to happen. I think we're going to see more of Jurassic World in season 2. Obviously, it won't be operational, but I think we can maybe see them making their way through other attractions, trying to find things. I could picture a few little nice nods to the events of the film, like maybe when they go back to Main Street, it's all now suddenly destroyed after the fight. I reckon, and I'm really hopeful, at some point, whether it's season 2 or a little bit further down the way, we're going to find out what happened to the monorail bridge and how that got destroyed. I think that could be an interesting sequence. And I think the key thing for me is this is now going to be Eric Kirby mode. So these guys are going to be surviving however they can. And I think we're going to kind of get to see a lot more of what you never see with Eric in JP3. So obviously in JP3, he's set up. He knows the law of the land. He's learnt that Tyrannosaur urine can be used to scare off other dinosaurs. I think that the next season will be the kids uncovering all of these things and finding that for themselves and working out how to survive.
Sure.
But I think you might have it interwoven with Dave and Roxy trying to get back to the island, and also potentially people like Manticore launching expeditions to try and recover assets and things like that. And I actually feel that Dave and Roxy could be a really nice piece of connective tissue for Fallen Kingdom. Because if you think about it, if they want to get back on the island, one of the most readily available ways for them to do that in the next couple of years would be joining the Dinosaur Protection Group.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say because when these characters leave the island, right? I know they tried to explain it that we left some kids behind, and the guy's like, "I don't care, we're leaving." As soon as you get
the kids
to like
are just like snacks for the dinosaurs.
yeah, but as soon as you get to like the mainland or wherever, you know, that place where all those people are in the hangar. Or
well,
whatever.
the army were there.
Yeah. So as soon as you tell somebody, wouldn't they just run on back and be like, "We have 6 kids or however many to go rescue"?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have them. Nobody has them. Their parents don't have them. So they are still back over there. We know they're still back over there. We left them in the woods. So how does this show go on for maybe multiple seasons here? You know, we're hearing things about multiple seasons, but like, does it, like, how do they avoid detection? You know, are they going to go to the island and like the military shows up and they're like, "Well, we can't find them." I mean, like, how convenient of a setting do we have to have here for this to continue on? Because I would assume they would go right back and be like, "I don't see these kids," you know?
I'm going to use a phrase, Brad. Presumed dead. We see it. It's a morbid phrase.
Yeah.
We see it used when people are in horrible situations and there's an unlikelihood for them to survive. If you think about in terms of Dave and Roxy, the last thing they saw was that blip going out on the Mosasaur Lagoon, and they found they didn't.
No,
they the monorail.
Yeah,
but after that point, the monorail was destroyed. So if they went back, it's very easy to presume that these characters are dead. And I mean, when you think about it,
it's kind of cheap.
It is. But it does make sense in context, because if we go back to the ATV by the visitor centre, for example, we never see that park worker die, but there's a bloody helmet there, so they are presumed dead. So
Sure.
I imagine there's a lot of incidents during the breakout where there's no closure for people, but people don't get home. And actually,
I don't know.
I think that there's scope there for them to do more things, because if these kids got left behind, other workers could have got left behind. Again, same circumstance, presumed dead. So maybe they do actually find some kind of other adult figure who's helping them to survive.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
With his robotic hand.
I'd love that, man. That would be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if like that's how the season starts. Is like, you know, episode 1 is all about some other person, you know, that's out there on their own. And then they end up coming into contact with them in maybe episode 3. You know, then you focus back on the kids on episode 2. And then by 3, it's like they all come together and try to make their way off. You just want this to be
The Walking Dead again, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I guess. And then it turns out there's a bunch of people.
Start a community in the north of the island called New Alexandria. And some of the kids are going to get annoyed and they're going to go and live at a hilltop.
My favorite part is when they all like skin the dinosaurs and wear the skin of the dinosaur. It's very
so this
very
isn't
grotesque.
A PG podcast anymore.
No, it's messed up now. But yeah, I think I like your thoughts on where it can go. I think again, I will reference Jurassic World Live Tour in hopes that somebody hears this. Anybody? Jurassic World Live Tour. They do go back to the island, so you know there is a chance that we could.
Yeah, they go back to look for Genie, don't they?
Yeah, so there is a chance that there could be some sort of meetup here. You know,
that would be cool.
Could meet like we were saying before. We don't really know a lot about who's gone where and who's gone back to the island, and you know who's done what. You know, whether it's another company or you know the Maserati company like cleaning up their assets or that reporter or whoever. Like there's random people that probably show up on this island at times, and the crew from Jurassic World Live Tour is one of those sets of people. So and Chad is almost like a mirror of Dave, so that would be a funny like little prospect there. But you know, I want them to intersect with this at some point in time. I would really love them to intersect with it, and it would be perfect to learn about. You know, and kind of what I was talking about, the fact that we don't really get those connections between these characters and stuff with whoever they're working for. That would be a nice way to kind of tie it in, is to kind of show like, you know, who are these other people working for and, you know, what other kind of projects were on the island. That would be a perfect way to introduce new projects that could show up in the future. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
That's my hope. But ultimately, like I was saying, I don't know how long you could let this go on for.
Yeah.
when I
Well,
feel
we
like
know
they
we've
should
got an
be
end
found.
cap, don't we? Which is Fallen Kingdom when they arrive on the island and start extracting the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
But potentially,
But
you
there's no
could
way they're going to
go.
be there for 3 years. Like, there's no
I
way.
mean, you
Like,
say that, but you never know. I could picture. So it might not be all
I'd
the
be
way
so
till
mad.
then, but the helicopter coming to get the Indominus sample, isn't that like a year after Jurassic World?
No,
So
isn't it like three
I
months? I think it's like 3 months later. So these kids
Yeah,
wreak
so
a lot of
I
havoc.
reckon it might cross over with that. And I could picture them
That
doing
would
a
be very
really
cool,
cool
though.
crossover
Mhm.
where imagine if the kids are rushing to Main Street because they think it's a rescue for them, and then they realize it's not. And you could kind of have that be the
Mhm.
epiphany moment where they realize they really are on their own and they need to figure out their own way off the island.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Imagining like maybe one or two kids make it almost all the way to the chopper,
Yeah,
but they stop because the T-Rex is there and their other friends can't get to them and they can't get through. Or the Dilophosaurus is right over there, like because we
yeah.
hear it in the background in that moment. I think that'll be amazing to see. And, I guess I forget where that confirmation originally came from. The fact that it was like only like 3 months later. We all question
Yeah.
like, well, why is this island so destroyed if it's only been 3 months?
Camp
You know?
Cretaceous can show us why.
Yeah, it's like Darius is just like having a blast with all the monorails
Yeah.
and just crashing trucks on the main street and stuff like that. So yeah, it just looks like a mess. So that would be very cool. I hope that gets a tie-in. They'd have to do a lot of work to, I think, explain that to the mainstream audience,
Yeah.
that like this moment in the beginning of Fallen Kingdom actually didn't take place right before. It took place years before Fallen Kingdom actually happened. So, yeah, because I could see people being like, oh, well, the helicopter just showed up to get that sample.
Yeah.
So the island's going to explode any minute now, right? Like,
There's so many cool things you could do with that. Like, you could even have it so they're down on to like introduce the new lagoon layout softly. You could have it so Darius is like down by the gate looking for something with one of the other kids when it just like starts opening and they don't know why. And then they're across the other side of Main Street.
Yeah.
And just imagine, like, from their perspective, watching this helicopter fly in, come back out, and then the mosasaur leap out of the water and like get it. It would be so cool.
That would be awesome. It would be cool, and it would be kind of crushing to see like their hopes, of a rescue just destroyed right in that moment.
Yeah.
But man, that would be really cool to see that tie in. But yeah, outside of the beginning of Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World Live Tour, and like I said, if you want to consider the Jurassic World revealed, that's the wrong word. We all revere Jurassic World, guys. Jurassic World revealed with and honestly, I didn't even listen to the entire thing. I'm sorry to say. But
Brad wanted it to be him. He wanted to be the podcast host.
No. I didn't get a chance because he had to like pay for it, and I just forgot, and and it's been a year or 2 years or however many since. So yeah, there's little moments where we can intersect with things that we know of, but I'm sure they'll come up with a lot of stuff that we don't know of, and that's fine. So yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I just hope we tie into Jurassic World Live Tour. That's my only hope.
Yeah. I want to end this by giving you a really exciting thought. There is nothing stopping them introducing new dinosaurs in this show. Because you can say they weren't on Nublar, but this show has now told us that north of Isla Nublar was where they kept dinosaurs that were too aggressive. So the Dilophosaurus may have been up there this whole time. But equally, it could be that they had bred something else, like, say, for example, Giganotosaurus, and they found out it was too aggressive, so it never made it into the public eye, because all of the stuff that was on the Jurassic World website was stuff that was publicly accessible. That now does not mean that list was everything, and I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah, that's very true. We could see other dinosaurs, but I just hope it doesn't become too repetitive when it's like, oh, we just gotta just escape dinosaurs the whole time. And sure, that's exactly what the series is. But to have it confined to whatever their timeline is, it might be a little much.
Yeah.
But to have them explore other canonical elements, I think, is the way to go. To talk about all these connections and to maybe explore the hybrid stuff and whatever data they can find. Sure, all the InGen team people seem to have wiped it clean, but who knows what else is
Yeah.
out there? And of course, to have them stumble across Jurassic Park places would be
Yeah,
amazing.
that would
You
be
know,
awesome.
to have them revisit the visitor center. Now you see there's a big hole in a certain section
Yeah.
of it or whatever, and so to do that stuff would be really cool. So hopefully
Well,
we
we
get our
could see
chance.
things like the Safari Lodge that we never saw in the first film.
Hmm.
That would be really awesome. Um, can I end this by?
Canonize some of those game moments, like the bone
Yeah,
rattler or shaker, whatever that ride was
yeah,
called. Yeah.
exactly. That kind of stuff. The geothermal plant. Well,
Hmm.
in my interview with Andy Nicholson, like 2 years ago at this point, which you can find by searching Andy Nicholson on our website, you will just his name.
Yeah.
You will find that in one part of it, we spoke about the bunkers from Fallen Kingdom,
Hmm.
and he said that it's very possible that they were part of the original parks network because they were designed so they could fit with the aesthetic of the 93 park. So there is definitely other infrastructure from that first park that we've not seen yet that we could explore.
Yeah. Yeah.
However,
Good.
I was going to say, and this is the question I want to ask you to like end this spoiler dive. Do
You're
you
just like,
think
it's late. Let's wrap this thing up. Come on. Enough talking.
No, we can keep going, but I want to like, this is my final like point I've got for tonight that I can think of because I've
Okay.
just spilled everything on you. Um, do you think that future series of this show necessarily have to be confined to just Isla Nublar?
No, I don't think so. I was wondering that myself if, something that they uncover in some lab, on Nublar sends them on some sort of mission to Sorna or
Siberia.
or Siberia even. Who knows? I didn't think that. That's not where my mind went. But just one of the other islands, because I'm sure there's a boat or something. I mean, granted, they're, many, hundreds of miles or however far away. But
They'll just go to Siberia instead of going to the mainland.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like I'm saying, if there's some sort of plot that they have to track down to
Yeah.
figure something out that, they want to reveal Dr. Wu as a villain or something, I don't know. It could be interesting to see them go to another island. I don't think it's very plausible because, to see a bunch of kids just traversing the waterways and just figuring out how to get, it doesn't really,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work, I don't think. But also we have to consider that whatever this show is next season, if that does come to light, has to figure out how to get the group back together with Ben and Bumpy and stuff like that. So they do have a lot of work to do to catch up.
I think you're onto something with boats. Because remember the original concept for Fallen Kingdom was boats that dinosaurs were being created on. There was a thing like way back in the early script.
I don't remember that.
I don't know if this is necessarily public, so if not, soz guys. I I remember there was something to do with Wu having a ship that he was like cloning dinosaurs on. And
That sounds fun.
It was going to be a case of like they were using different dinosaur like boats to steal dinosaurs from the islands and take them all across the world. So kind of similar to the Arcadia, but the whole plot was going to be around that idea. So I suppose there would be nothing stopping another company coming to the island, taking the dinosaurs, and the kids stowing away on the boat.
Yeah. I mean, that is certainly plausible. Yeah, to like, hey, we gotta hide. There's some people coming that don't seem very good. They got a bunch of weapons or something. It's like let's get in this crate, and then the crate gets transported on, to another thing.
And they have to do a blood transfusion with a T-Rex.
No, not that. I was thinking more so the Dora the Explorer movie. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but it's actually really good. It's actually pretty good. I actually really enjoyed that movie. But like there's
this
a moment.
Podcast has taken a turn.
No, dude, check it out. I'm telling you. You probably watched it as a kid, I'm sure. No, maybe you didn't. I don't know what they show out there. But that's what happens to them. They get put in like a wooden crate and then, taken to another place. So, I guess it's possible that, and that is a very plausible thing, I think, for like a kid-centric show. So yeah, definitely a good idea. I think that they, unintentionally get transported somewhere else, and maybe they do end up on Sorna or some other island or Siberia, and they're like, we didn't bring our coats, guys, and then they have to figure out how to stay warm. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching and listening. This has been fun. We're going to be doing a lot more of stuff like this in the future. I don't know. We'll probably do some, and like I said at the beginning, we've been producing so much content and stuff, so I felt like we'll try to spread some stuff out in the future here with maybe episode by episode breakdowns, watch parties, stuff like that. We'll get back into it soon, not right away, not at the release of this, but stay tuned for more content from Camp Cretaceous. And of course, we're going to be talking about this now. From here on out, it's going to be talked about in the show. I'll give it some time probably with the spoilers, on the main podcast episodes. But I'm excited to officially have Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous out, being watched and being talked about. Man, this is so much fun, and this is going to continue for a long time because we just talked for almost 2 hours when we didn't set a limit, but we almost did it. We almost did it, guys. And with zero script, basically no notes, and we did it, guys. So this is going to be a fun process, I think. So thank you, Tom. Do you have any final words here, and you want to let people know where they can find you online?
So I guess my final words would be to quote what Colin said to Josh and Jen, which is a new era, because this really is a new era for the Jurassic franchise, and it's exciting to be a part of that. And with that all said, if you would like more ridiculous hot takes and a few Steve Cream memes, then hit me up at Tom Jurassic on Instagram and Twitter.
Well, if I'm gonna summarize this with a quote, are you done? You're done plugging yourself, right? You good? Okay. I'm going to summarize it with a quote from this show. Are you hiding Bumpy in that bush? And if you want to find me online, you can find me at Brad Jost on Twitter, and of course the podcast at Jurassic Park Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at Jurassic Park Podcast. Same thing with Facebook. Search out for our Facebook group. Join up, answer those 2 questions. Follow us here on YouTube and the podcast itself. Just search for the Jurassic Park Podcast on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'd be a little iffy about Spotify, guys. It seems like Spotify has been kind of letting us down recently. It's been cutting off a lot of people, like actually just cutting off the series. Like, so we'll have an episode that's like 40 minutes long, and for some reason, it cuts it down to 20. And I don't know what's going on. I have no way of fixing that, so sorry about that. So find another way to listen, guys.
Internet has finally started to censor me.
Yeah, so they just don't want to hear these endings of these shows because they're a little off the rails. But I don't know what's going on there. I'm sorry about the Spotify issues. Find another way to listen. Overcast is a great app. You can use that on your Apple devices. You can use Google Podcasts on your Android devices, and I'm sure there's plenty others out there as well. And so go to JurassicParkPodcast.com. Tom's got some articles. We've got videos and episode show notes. Everything you guys want to find out about the podcast is on that site. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and listening to the podcast. Stay safe out there and enjoy.